helm soon enough. At the helm, rather. But Max, I want to ask you, who's going to be the Week 1 starter for the Bears?
Carson Wentz. Chicago Nets never gets quarterback right. My whole life, they've never gotten quarterback right, the Bears. So why start now? Carson Wentz will be the Week 1 starter. What the Bears are dealing with is an offensive line that has a hard time protecting the quarterback. So they'd like a guy who can throw down the field like Nick Foles. But Nick Foles can't move around and that line can't protect him. So they need a guy who's mobile like Mitch Trubisky. But Trubisky can't throw it down the field. Carson Wentz has shown that he is both mobile and he has the ability he's shown in the past to throw it down the field. So he checks both boxes. In addition, John DeFilippo was his quarterback's coach, Wentz's quarterback's coach, when he had his best season in 2017. Not only doing all the things I just mentioned, but was great on the money down, on third down, something he's been awful at recently, the worst in the league this season. And DeFilippo has reportedly said he thinks he can fix Wentz. He has to get in there and fix him. I think other teams might be gun-shy if they don't have a guy on the staff who is experienced with Wentz. DeFilippo, by the way, was Wentz's quarterback's coach in Philadelphia. He's been promoted now. He's the passing game coordinator in Chicago. I think the connection is there. I think the need is there. I think the misguided way the Bears think about quarterbacks is there. I think they're going to make a deal.
Can't see it happening, Max Kellerman, particularly if Nick Foles is there. Is Nick Foles still there? I mean, I don't recall correctly. I might have, it's amnesia. It might be selective, may not be. But isn't Nick Foles still there? Isn't the guy that took Carson Wentz's job? Isn't the one that ultimately capitalized off of Carson Wentz's injury, guided them to a Super Bowl, and had the Eagles locker room divided because half the dudes in there wanted Nick Foles to be the quarterback, the other half wanted Carson Wentz? Isn't that Nick Foles still in Chicago now? Last time I checked. So guess what? Yep. I can't see the Bears trying to move their problem, trying to move Eagles' old problems from Philadelphia to Chicago. I don't see that. I don't see that with Nagy. I just don't see that happening. I don't see it because Nagy is in a different situation with Pace and those boys. I don't see that happening. And I got to tell you something about Mitchell Trubisky. He threw 8 interceptions last year, just like he did the season before, threw for over 2,000 yards. We get all of that. Completed a better percentage of his passes than Nick Foles did this past season. I look at Mitchell Trubisky, and guess what, Max? As awful as we thought he was at times, and as much faith as we lacked in Mitchell Trubisky, Max, I don't think we ever talked about him as badly as we talked about Carson Wentz last season. So why am I making that move? Why am I thinking about Carson Wentz coming to Chicago instead of Mitchell Trubisky? If they're going to lose Mitchell Trubisky, it ain't going to be because of Carson Wentz. I don't see it at all. I don't see that at all. I see Mitchell Trubisky staying right there in Chicago. I don't think they'd be able to get anybody else outside of Carson Wentz, and I don't think you sacrifice Mitchell Trubisky and throw him to the wolves in favor of Carson Wentz, who may very well be worse, particularly with your offensive line being questionable, to say the least. Your running game, even though I like David Montgomery, your running game being suspect as well. I don't see that. I really don't.
I think the running game's also an offensive line issue, but yeah, you and I agree about that. I prefer Trubisky to Wentz too. The fact is, the Chicago Bears always get this wrong. I think they'll get it wrong again. And by the way, when you talk about the so-called problems in Philly, the last time Wentz and Foles played together, first they won a Super Bowl, and then they did a damn good job trying to defend it. Don't forget, they won a playoff game on the road against Chicago with Foles, and then they went to New Orleans, almost beat the Saints, right? So I think that those two together actually have worked in the past. I don't know that they could afford to have both of those guys on the same team right now.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think that especially because of the DeFilippo connection, there's going to be the belief in Chicago that he can fix Wentz. And Wentz has mobility, not as mobile as Trubisky, but he's mobile and he has an arm.
How can you fix Wentz but not fix
because Mitchell Trubisky? Because Trubisky's never thrown it down the field. That's really his problem. I agree with you about Trubisky, like his attitude is better. He took his benching like a man. Didn't undermine the team. Didn't leak to the press on game day undermining the quarterback. Was a trooper. By the way, got the job back and played better when he got the job back. Good for him, and I would prefer him to Wentz. But I think what they recognize is Trubisky's floor is is kind of low, and his ceiling isn't that high. Wentz's floor is low, but they look at him and think at least he has a high ceiling. And the last time that dude was his quarterback's coach, he hit it. So I think they're going to try to do that again. And as you mentioned, Stephen A., what are the options for Chicago right now?
Well, the option is to keep Mitchell
realistically,
Trubisky.
who else can they go get?
The option is to keep Mitchell Trubisky, who's a better runner of the football than a Carson Wentz. Last year was a better passer of the football than Carson Wentz. He went from completing 63% of his passes the year before. Mitchell Trubisky last year completed 67% of his passes. Let's pump the brakes a little bit when we're condemning Chicago for picking Mitchell Trubisky because they passed on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, not because he's worse than Carson Wentz was. That's the difference.
That is a shameful thought to think about. Now let's look at Carson Wentz.
Max.
According to Elias, he's just the fourth player to lead the league in time sacked, also interceptions. Max, you say the Bears can fix him? We'll see about that. All right, guys, we got to leave it there. We have more to get to coming up.
I'm actually with Stephen A on
exactly.
this. They think they can
fix
him.
We'll see. We'll see if they can follow through. All right, guys, LeBron James, he's looking for that fifth ring, but there's some teams in the West that could stand in his way. Stephen A and Max here to tell you who are those teams who could cost the Lakers a trip to the finals. Plus, is Dak going to get that long-term deal? The supposed numbers he's after, and who here thinks the Cowboys need to suck it up and pay the man? More First Take coming your way. Dak Prescott still has not been signed to a long-term deal in Dallas and is hoping to avoid being slapped with the franchise tag for a second straight year. Ed Werder joined KJZ on the phone yesterday to discuss the talk swirling around the quarterback.
Unless the Cowboys give Dak Prescott exactly what he wants, I don't see Dak having any reason to do anything until the March 9th deadline to be designated a franchise player, because that's when he'll maximize his leverage. I talked to Mike McCartney, who was the agent for Kirk Cousins.